As the 21st century began, human evolution was at a turning point. Natural selection, the process by which the strongest, the smartest, the fastest reproduced in greater numbers than the rest, a process which had once favored the noblest traits of man, now began to favor different traits. Most science fiction of the day predicted a future that was more civilized and more intelligent. But as time went on, things seemed to be heading in the opposite direction, a dumbing down. How did this happen? Evolution does not necessarily reward intelligence. With no natural predators to thin the herd, it began to simply reward those who reproduced the most and left the intelligent to become an endangered species.
Having kids is such an important decision.
We're just waiting for the right time. It's not something you want to rush into, obviously.
No way.
Oh shit, I'm pregnant again!
I got too many damn kids. Thought you was on the pill or some shit.
Hell no!
Must have been thinking of Brittany.
Brittany? No, you... There's no way we could have a child now. Not with the market the way it is, no.
God, no. That just wouldn't make any sense.
Come on, Claire, bitch! He don't care about you!
Yeah, well, there must be something he likes over here.
Ain't nothing to me, baby. It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
Well, we finally decided to have children, and I'm not pointing fingers, but it's not going well.
And this is helping.
I'm just saying that before I have in vitro, maybe you should be willing to...
It's always me, right?
Well, it's not my sperm count.
Yeah! I'm gonna fuck all y'all. That's my boy.
And so it went for generations, although few if any seemed to notice. The years passed, and mankind became stupider at a frightening rate. Some had high hopes that genetic engineering would correct this trend in evolution. But sadly, the greatest minds and resources were focused on conquering hair loss and prolonging erections. Meanwhile, the population exploded and intelligence continued to decline until humanity was incapable of solving even its most basic problems, like garbage, which had been stacked for centuries with no plan whatsoever.
Welcome to the only political podcast that misinformed almost always, but gets it right more than pretty much everybody. I'm your host, Ryan King, and I have so much stuff to talk about. There's COVID information that everybody knew from a year ago, and now is somehow new research. Alan Dershowitz completely changed his position on COVID. Holy fuck, I probably shouldn't have smoked so much weed before I did this. Alan Dershowitz changed his position on COVID mandates, even though he's wrote an entire book on the reasons for why we used them. Diagolon is an extremist group that nobody's heard of and is probably just a 4chan meme. Hershey is going woke, and they're probably going to go broke. All of that, and if there's time, I will show you a clip from a debate that really spoke volumes to me. I'm a little late to the party on it. It's probably, 3 or 4 months old now, but it was so good that it needs to be shared. So, with all that being said, let's start off with the new research that we have. Apparently, if this is shocking to anybody, immunity acquired from COVID infection is as protective as vaccination against severe illness and death. So I want to say that it was day one of mandates being required, or people suggesting that there was going to be some sort of passport or forced vaccination, or there was no talk. That was laughable to say, well, what about immunity? Like, what about if I just had COVID like last week? It's probably pretty rare that I'm going to get it now, right? And now they're coming out with science that seemed to have been delayed a very long period of time up until right now, where they're like, turns out if you had COVID, you're probably not going to get it again. It's actually just as good as the thing that we spent the most tested and trialed vaccine that's ever been produced. So, and if you tell Neil deGrasse Tyson that it wasn't tested enough, holy shit, he'll have an aneurysm. But it turns out that 88% effective for 10 months if you've had COVID. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen the memes that have been rolling around since the COVID started, when Pfizer was projecting 100% efficacy in their vaccines, and then it slowly went down to 30% if you didn't have a booster, and then if you had a booster, it's like 60. It wasn't even this good. It was this good for the first week of the vaccines being in circulation. 88% efficacy is astronomical. That's the best thing. That is literally the best form of immunity. And the fact that scientists didn't know that, and I did a year ago, 2 years ago, where I'm like, it's usually better for like the body to like deal with stuff a little bit and see, like, medication is more of a like, oh, your body couldn't handle that kind of situation. I don't really like preventative medicine as much as probably just exercising. If you're not on like a great exercise and diet regimen and you're doing preventative medicine, I think that's there's something wrong there. If you're just like, I don't really feel like moving and eating better, do you have like a pill I can take that'll just make me feel better? That's not good. So when we've got a system of that, preventative medicine, where it's just like, I'm not sick, I don't know anybody that's sick, I haven't felt sick this entire time, but I'm going to get a vaccine just in case, I don't think that's good. Unless we get to a point where it's not preventative, it's like reactionary. Excuse me. Like polio, say. Like, kids are dying from polio and living on an iron lung. People don't know what an iron lung is today. Nobody sees an iron lung. The average kid growing up today will not even understand what an iron lung is. But growing up, for me, there were still, like, probably not, I think there were still like 1 or 2 people alive that were on an iron lung when I was growing up, because I remember hearing about it, because there were still reminiscent jokes in the media. So, like, you'd be watching a TV show, and then all of a sudden a kid would be in this iron casket that's breathing for him, and they're like, what is that? And they kind of half explain it to you in even a child's show. So I understood that there were people that had to live inside of a, like, picture your hot water heater, except it just makes you breathe. It's like what people had to go in for COVID, like a respirator, but it's like a tomb. It's like an Iron Maiden that makes you breathe. Not the band, the Egyptian thing. But I couldn't believe that that's a thing, because in my life, that's never been a thing. And that's because of the reactionary medicine of the polio vaccine. People were dying. They didn't know what to do. They tried and tried and tried until they found a thing that obliterated it. And then nobody was on an iron. Nobody had polio blankets and couldn't walk. That wasn't a thing. There were presidents that had polio. So if you think that it wasn't like a problem, it was definitely a problem, because the highest person in our society got polio. So that's reactionary. Preventative, I think, is money grabbing most of the time. You could prove me wrong. I probably haven't thought all the way through, but I think most of the time, preventative medicine is mostly bullshit. I'll say it that way, because it's like multivitamins and stuff. Like, sure, there are things, and it's usually only good when your body doesn't do what it's supposed to do properly. So there's a vast majority of people that should take supplements and things like that because their body's not doing what it should naturally. But you should definitely exhaust all options of natural types of boosting whatever it is you're deficient in. If you got a fucking vitamin D deficiency, go outside and stare at the sun. Stare directly into the sun with your eyes open. That's the best way to get vitamin D. I'm a scientist. You can trust me. I can tell you, if you ever feel you're feeling down, just stare into the sun. But if you do it with if you don't actually stare at all of that was sound advice, except for the stare at the sun. Just close your eyes when you do that, because there is nothing better than going out into the sun and just letting the sun bask in your face, because that is the best thing. It's definitely not better to take vitamin D supplements than to just stare into the sun. Now, if you live in a godforsaken place like England and you don't have sun there, then yeah, you're probably going to need to take like a fish oil pill the size of like a horse tranquilizer and just to feel something, because you don't have the sun. But I think that's their problem. That's kind of what I've been going around here, is that when you can't get what you need, that's what medicine should do. When there's something that your body can't handle, medicine should react to that, not prevent, not try to go out of their way to do things like this, because I think it's kind of just playing God at a certain point, and that's when you get sketchy. Things get weird when you try to play God and prevent things like that. You should react to them. I think that's the way. Treatment rather than prevention, and the treatment should be everyday life. You should be healthy, and that's coming from a guy who's probably in the course of this year has almost 150 Pepsis, and it's March. So if I know that, you should know that too. But it seems like we don't, including people like Alan Dershowitz, who in my life has gone from an advocate for free speech, a person who like I knew of him before I even enjoyed looking up things in politics and enjoyed talking about it, enjoyed discussing it. It seems like it's impossible to do this anymore because people don't have perspectives. They just have opinions they've regurgitated. And I think it's kind of gross. I think that's really gross that's where we're at right now. But Alan Dershowitz, he was a lawyer, I believe, a long time ago, and I believe like a free speech advocate and civil liberties lawyer, I believe. I don't really remember. I didn't do my research into Alan Dershowitz, but he was a name when I was growing up. Like, he's been around for a long time, and like even before I was like even forming my identity in politics, I knew who Alan Dershowitz was, because I was the kind of guy who watched those weird conspiracy theory documentaries and like underground stuff that wasn't really talked about in most political perspectives. So I've always been kind of like a contrarian libertarian. That's what I like to call myself. It's like, I don't even believe in half the stuff libertarians believe in, but I do believe in smaller government is always the answer. Whatever you ask me a question, smaller government. Dude, less government involvement, because if you think what the government is doing is bad, then having them involved in it is only going to make it better. Like, so whatever it is, whatever you think their policy, their idea, their infrastructure, if you take the government out of it, it's like removing cancer from a body. It now can thrive on its own or die on its own. That's also a possibility, but that means it wasn't good. It was being held, it was being propped up. It was fake. It was all a lie. But if you remove the government, it gives it the ability to do what it was going to do naturally. Like, if it's going to do shady shit, people are going to be aware of that because it doesn't have a government body to cover up or pay for or do whatever it does to get it out of the public talking points. I think always less government is the answer. Alan Dershowitz used to think that, I believe. I used to think that there was a point that I believe I remember reading something from Alan Dershowitz that was, when you attack free speech and people's freedoms and civil liberties, that is the last bastion of democracy. Something along those lines. That's the last semblance of true freedom, is when you start taking out people's ability to be free, is how I interpreted that. But so here's my man, Pimp on a Blimp, Alex Stein 69, Alex Stein 99. I've been following him for a while. He's basically, if you haven't followed him, he is, I believe he's just newly signed to the Daily Wire over in the conservative sphere. but he was amazing. He's probably going to go downhill now, honestly, now that he's in like a bigger platform because he'll have limitations and stuff. But he used to just go around to these like Plano, Texas school board meetings and dress up as like your nightmare liberal. Like blue hair, wearing a Starbucks smock, talking about his trans niece that needs surgery. And like it was just bananas, the stuff that he would talk about. He sang the gas prices are way too high. Vladimir Putin has to die. That song is a banger, and I stand by it. But this is him. I don't know how he got Alan Dershowitz. I don't know what happened. It's probably the connections at the Daily Wire. But he got to ask him about his opinions now in 2023 about vaccine mandates and where we stand. So listen to him, and it also cuts in the clip of what he thought in 2000.
If the Super Viral video where you said we should have mandatory vaccines, I disagree with you on that. But this is the one thing that I have to ask you. Moderna, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, which vaccine do you have?
I don't believe in mandatory vaccination now. What I said was,
let me put it very clearly. You have no constitutional right to endanger the public and spread a disease, even if you disagree. You have no right not to be vaccinated. You have no right not to wear a mask. You have no right to open up your business.
Wait, can I stop you?
Yeah.
No right not to be vaccinated, meaning if they decide you have to be vaccinated, we have to be vaccinated?
Absolutely. And if you refuse to be vaccinated, the state has the power to literally take you to a doctor's office and plunge a needle into your arm.
Now, if you don't find that scary as one of the number one civil liberties lawyers in America had that perspective at the draconian period of 2020, because that is one of the scariest periods in time where we don't even realize the pieces that were moved. We're like a toddler who has a small foundation of what checkers is, and the government has been playing chess this whole time, and they haven't taken a single piece, but what they did was set up a trap that's unescapable. That's what I believe is what's happened. We don't even see it on the board. We're looking at this board and we think we're playing checkers, but they have a trap that within one move, one string gets pulled, and it all comes crumbling down into a checkmate. And I don't know where that lands, but I guarantee it doesn't land in smaller government. I can tell you that whatever plan the government has is just to inflate itself. It wants... The government is like its own entity, regardless of what side you think you're on. Like, you have to be purple at this point. If you're red or blue, you're stupid. Just understand that. If you're just dyed-in-the-wool red conservative, then you've drank the Kool-Aid as much as the person that you hate on the other side. It's always like that. You have to be fully purple in order to understand. You should have perspectives that are on both sides, because that's the only way that you're a sane person. No sane person thinks like the craziest people on both sides. So we used to find common ground and meet in the middle, but now we like to find echo chambers. That's what we like. We like people who agree with us and people who are going to go, yeah, and do that. And I find that I enjoy it too. If you're on the same side as me, it feels like we're on the same team cheering for a sport. That's what it feels like. It feels like yeah, you believe in XYZ, so do I. Let's go. We're not going to do anything about it. Let's just talk about it. But that's pretty much most people's political experience, because you avoid talking to the people that have different perspectives for you. So you're not going to form a different perspective because you shut them down the second that you listen to them. And then when somebody does agree with you, even if it might be a little bit crazier, because we've all run into that person that agrees with maybe one of our little wacky ideas, but then they're also a little nutty, but then you give them a little leeway because they also agree with something you agree with. But that's not the way that that's not the way you should work. You should seek out conversations like what we're seeing right here between this guy who looks flabbergasted by the idea that a civil liberties lawyer, somebody who is supposed to fight for your just liberties given by the state that shouldn't be infringed upon, the things that are just like the foundation of what you should have, believes that the government has the right on a whim to say this is so bad that you have to all do this. This is how you get terrible regimes. This is how you do that. When you step in line with things like this is how you get, it's stupid, but it's how you get Nazism. And I think the problem that what happened over the last little while, I think even since like 2016, is the word Nazi as a whole got dulled down. It used to, before, I would say in 2010, if somebody called someone a Nazi, you were like, oh, like the kind of guy who wears the boots and like he has like maybe a couple of swastika tattoos. Like a Nazi was straight up American History X. Like, you see these tattoos? Yeah. It's that kind of stuff that was a Nazi. That's what you called a Nazi, and it was reserved just for them. Nobody else was allowed to be called a Nazi because that didn't make sense. You're calling them a Nazi. Like, and as dumb as this is, as stupid as this may seem, here's my theory. The crack in the Nazi armor came, it was a slow leak. It came around Seinfeld time. Now, there's a character in Seinfeld called the Soup Nazi, and the Soup Nazi was just a guy who was very strict about how he ran his soup shop. If you came into the soup shop and you didn't do something, you didn't stand in line, you asked for extra bread, you would get kicked out. He would grab the soup and say, "No soup for you," and was funny. It was funny. That's what happened. It was a hilarious bit on the show. He was the Soup Nazi, and saying like, "You're a Nazi about this," was like the slow crack in the armor where Nazi didn't have that like harsh, unpalatable taste, where it was like a Nazi, like you didn't picture immediately like a skinhead with like an eagle tattoo on his back. That's not what you pictured. You kind of pictured somebody who was like anal retentive, or somebody who was just like really uptight. That's kind of the way that it started to trend. That's what Nazi, and then it went to anybody who you didn't agree with, basically. If you didn't agree with them and they were left of the average middle school teacher, you were a Nazi. That's pretty much what it is. You couldn't be middle of the road. You couldn't have an opinion on that. You were a Nazi. And that's made it to the point where when somebody is literally pushing Nazi idealism or like something that resembles the actual structure of like the Nazi regime, it sounds stupid. It sounds dumb, because everybody from Alex Jones to Joe Rogan has been called a Nazi. So what does that even mean anymore? Does it mean anything? I don't think it does. I think that Nazi has lost all meaning. That an actual Nazi wouldn't even identify by today's Nazi. Does that make sense? Because, like, the new Nazi is like a word we don't even understand. Like, it hasn't even been created. It's a complete fabrication in the world because we don't know what. Like, I know what a Nazi is, but the term Nazi has now become meaningless, because you could be, if you just said there's a Nazi over there, you could mean anything from Richard Spencer to Jordan Peterson to Alan Dershowitz. It could be literally anyone, or it could be a man literally curb stomping an African American in black and white at the beginning of American History X. Do you see how there's kind of a big gap in between those things? But yet, when today's standard of Nazi is more the first rather than the second. Does that to me is it's an issue that goes unnoticed, that I think is big, because saying that you believe the government has the ability to drag you out of your home, take you to a doctor's office, and forcibly vaccinate you. If there's nothing close to Nazi idealism or fascism or just downright batshit ideas, that we can't call it that. We can't, because it's meaningless. Calling somebody a Nazi who's actually being a Nazi is downplaying what they are. I don't know. It's dumb. But speaking of Nazis, Diagolon. If you know what Diagolon is, then you're strange. You're an odd character because you shouldn't know what Diagolon is. Because if you're hearing me say Diagolon and you're going, hell yeah, brother, unite the Diagolon, you're dumb. You got to be dumb because, or you're a super genius on a whole nother level. Well, we're playing checkers and the government's playing chess. You're over here playing 4D chess. You're up here on some whole other level because there's no middle ground. Either you literally eat dirt or you're a superhuman next level NASA IQ. Because Diagolon, by my research, is a meme. Let me show you Diagolon. This is Diagolon. It's a diagonal country in North America that doesn't exist. So if you're listening, it basically just picture a diagonal line from Florida to Alaska. It takes Texas and Colorado, looks like Nevada, skips over Washington. It looks like fuck Oregon and Washington. We're not taking that, but we got Vancouver, Alberta, Northwest Territories, and Alaska. Pretty much that covers most of what we got. And it seems perfect. I love it. I'll move there today. That seems like an amazing, whatever this country is. Mwah. But it doesn't exist. It's a made up meme that somehow made it into the mainstream. If you remember It's Okay to Be White, then you're an OG. You're a goddamn OG, and I respect you. But It's Okay to Be White was a 4chan meme that said that they're going to make the media freak out by putting up innocuous pieces of paper that say it's okay to be white. And then it was a racist Nazi fascism, blah, blah, blah. So that's more to my point that it's okay to be white written on a piece of paper is Nazism. So it's lost all meaning. So the idea of this is these are like, it's like forced red pill moments by an underground Reddit forum, basically. If I can explain this in a one sentence thing, that's how I would explain it. But what basically happens here is a group of people go on a forum called 4chan, and they make up a dumb idea that is flawless. Like I will say, it is dumb in idea, but flawless in practice. That is how it always goes out. There's been millions of these. The idea that transgenderism is so prevalent in today's culture may be a mass 4chan troll. I am not convinced that that's not true. So if in 15 years we come back and we find out that that's true, you can take this clip and you can be like, wow, he's a genius. If he's wrong, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. That's okay. But that's okay. It's better to be wrong and shoot your shot. But because if you look into it, there is a mass group of people on 4chan that were blackmailing people to become trans. That is an absolute fact. It's not like a mass amount in the population, but it was a lot of people that they did this to. And now, this Diagolon meme is an idea that a fascist group is somehow going to invade diagonally America and Canada, and we take over the best parts and then use it for Nazism. It's very confusing. But I'm going to let the actual guy who made up Diagolon or a founding member of Diagolon explain Diagolon to you. So this guy is asked about Diagolon in a meeting because, funny enough, Trudeau, my main man Trudeau, used Diagolon as a point to use the Emergencies Act when shutting down the convoy protest outside of Ottawa last year. So this is a video of somebody being asked, clearly not for the first time, about Diagolon.
Sir, how do you know Mr. McKenzie?
He does. He has a podcast, and he does a lot of political satire and comedy. He does some serious videos sometimes. He is the creator of a fictitious meme on the internet known as Diagolon, which I assume what you're going to ask me about. And the vice president of Diagolon being a time-traveling, cocaine-addicted goat. That is just a internet meme that has no meaning at all. And I had spoken to Jeremy the first time when I was in Ottawa on the phone. And the second time I spoke to Jeremy was when the Liberal government was debating whether or not they should use the Emergency Act, and they were citing this fictitious goat that time travels as a domestic terrorist group in justification for invoking the Emergency Act. And I saw a video that Jeremy and his friends were doing, and they were laughing hysterically, showing clips of the government actually talking about Diagolon as being a real thing.
So, me being diligent and, you know, the best goddamn political commentary channel that ever existed, I did that digging, and I found said clip that that is going around of, it's a supercut of the government and government agencies and during meetings talking about Diagolon. There is a literal Diagolon meeting. Somewhere someone is being paid off of taxpayer money to talk about a cocaine-addicted goat who travels through time, who's going to invade diagonally through North America. Do you understand how stupid that is? Do you understand how dumb the government is? Do you understand why I want less government always? Anyway, here's Diagolon.
Story time. I got a story for you. It's a true story.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act.
Diagolon.
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 Diagolon. Diagolon. A far-right extremist group.
We're talking about a group that is organized, driven by an extreme ideology.
A so-called accelerationist group.
Formed by a former member of the Canadian Armed Forces.
Which aims to accelerate racial conflict to lead to the eventual creation of a white ethno-state.
Its stated purpose is, quote, to incite a race war.
Oh my God. Dude. It's over. It's fucking done. Members of Parliament are talking about a meme. A meme to justify a state of emergency.
They're super country. Dude, did we predict this on one of the old fucking streams? Remember it's diagonal country all the way to Alaska? Dude, you know, here it is. All the way from Florida, all the way up. Super diagonal country.
Justin Trudeau.
So, that's the supercut, which is goddamn hilarious. Think about the fact that, okay, we all know that the average age of a political cabinet is the same average age as a retirement home. It's like somehow there's only two avenues that happen when you get to retirement age. Either they put you in an old age home, they drug you up and put a diaper on you and have it like a nurse come change you and feed you Jell-O all day, or you make decisions that affect the entire country. It makes no sense because, honestly, if you told my 80-year-old grandpa about a fascist group that was going to take over a diagonal slice of North America to make a white ethno-state, he would even get that that's a meme. He would understand that. And he doesn't know what a meme is. He wouldn't even understand what a fucking meme is. And I would go, he would retroactively understand what a meme is when I was trying to explain what Diagolon is. I would love to. Maybe as a special edition, I'll go travel to my grandpa's house and ask him about Diagolon. Have you heard about Diagolon trying to invade diagonally through America and Canada? It's not going to affect us because we're here over in Ontario, so we get to stay in the half of Canada that's left, and I guess we unite with like Ohio or something. Like Pennsylvania and New York becomes part of Canada, and then Diagolon is taken over, and we're just constantly fighting at the border of Diagolon. There's like a no man's zone like North Korea, and I'm going to explain that to him, and he's going to put me in a home. He's going to ask if I need to be changed because you sound insane. But I think it might be some fun commentary. Maybe I'll go truck up and see my grandpa, ask him what his opinions on Diagolon are. That would be hilarious. So, the CBC, which is a bastion of being correct all the time. It wrote an article on the Diagolon and what is Diagolon. That is about over a year old. Still up right now. And if you see right here, Diagolon can be categorized as an accelerationist group according to researchers who study extremism. And the fact that there's, again, researchers who are definitely government funded studying extremism. What the fuck does that even mean? What does your day-to-day... You know, you see those TikToks of those Google employees or Twitter employees, and it's like a day in the life, and it's got that fun, happy music behind it. I would love to see a day in the life of an extremist researcher. Like, here's a day in the life. I Google Nazi and see who comes up. I check Twitter for trending Nazi topics, and then I blackball anybody who comes up. Anybody said a no-no word, you're probably being extreme. Like, what do they classify? What is extreme? So, like, they just go to the X Games and they're like, wow, these guys are extreme.
You suck.
I'm sorry. But, okay, so Diagolon, even in their own meme here, like their own explanation of what Diagolon is, they've they missed the mark. They didn't even say, it's like they said it comes from a group of live streamers called the Plaid Army, according to the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Again, a branch of the government that is so fucking stupid. Like, can you imagine there's a government agency, a portion of every single one of your taxable hours goes to a division of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Think about that. Think about how dumb that is. Think about how many homeless kids there are. Every single time that the anti-hate Canadian, I can't even remember your stupid fucking name because you're so goddamn shitty. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network, every single time they need to ask for another dime from the government, they should have to stand up and say how many homeless kids there are. All right, today we are asking for another $100 million investment in the Canadian Anti-Hate Program. We are looking at cyberbullying and things of that. But first, we are going to read off the names of every single hungry kid in our country, and then they'll never get to it because they'll be busy. They'll be busy for weeks naming every kid because until I've said this so many times, it's getting till we solve bigger issues, let's not divert funds to things like the Anti-Hate Network. It's so dumb. I hope it's a TV network and I'm just getting overwhelmed and it's just a really positive TV network and I'm just getting all worked up over the Anti-Hate Network, but fuck you. But yeah, so apparently it's an anti-Semitic, ethnocentric, white nationalist group that's going to divide the country. You're welcome. Thank you. I'll be here all week. But that's Diagolon. That's Diagolon in a nutshell. There's nothing more to say about Diagolon. Please never mention Diagolon ever again. All right, Hershey's. Hershey's gone woke. They're definitely going broke. So I don't know if you've seen the new Hershey commercial, but I'll play it for you right now. It's
My
dumb.
name is Faye Johnstone. I'm the executive director of Wisdom to Action. We can create a world where everyone is able to live in public space as their honest and authentic selves. See the women changing how we see the future at Hershey's Canada.
So, even if you were just listening to that, you could probably tell that was a biological man who was the lead executive, the face of the Hershey campaign. And if that's not troubling, like, I get it. I get what you're trying to do here, and you're trying to get, it's like Reddit upvotes in real life. If you just do things like this, you just get default upvotes by bots online that are like, yes, go, you go, slay queen. They say it's just so weird to, for years, say men are invading women's spaces, men are taking over, men are taking so much from us, and then just willingly let them do it. It is an unbelievable idea to be like, men are fucking terrible. Men are holding us down. They've cemented over that glass ceiling so we can't get through. So we're going to create spaces for ourselves. We're going to do women-only things. And then to just actively, not only just seek out men to be the face of your women's-only products or women's-only campaigns is just wild to me. That is just so crazy. Because I'm okay if you want to live as a woman. Like, I don't care. But to pretend like this is now a woman is insane. And you'll never be able to convince me otherwise. Because that's not... I don't care so much about the wording. It's just accept what it is. Make a word and I will be fine with it. I don't really care. But I think you can be like anything you want. You can dress like a woman, you can cut your dick off, you can cut your tits off, you can do literally whatever you want to your body. I don't care. It's when you affect other people that's the problem. If you need assurance from me that you're a woman because even you don't believe it, so you need to be the face of a Hershey campaign, the problem isn't us, the problem is you, is that you don't accept yourself. Believe me, I don't either. I like to think that I am tough, smart, and handsome. And I'm none of those. I am none. But I like to believe it. And if everybody went around telling me that all the time, I might start believing it. I might really start believing that I'm tough and handsome and smart. But I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm not. So no matter how many people went around sucking my dick, if they did a whole Ryan is so smart and brilliant and handsome campaign, I wouldn't partake. I would be like, no, I'm not. I'm not all that great, because you have to be self-aware in order to grow. I think that's the key to everything. And these people, you notice a lot are stunted in even their like emotional growth, where it's like people cater to them. It turns them into like a spoiled child. People that you're not allowed to make fun of are being ruined from the inside out. You don't even see it. You don't even see it because they're not getting the reality of the world. It's like if you've been bowling your entire life with the bumpers on and you've come up with strategies to use these bumpers and stuff, and then you just go into a professional league and they rip the bumpers off, it's going to be real tough. It's going to be really tough for you. I'm going to say you're not going to be as good as you were. It's the same. You've given these people bumpers for life, and when life actually hits them in the face, they can't handle it. And I mean anybody like this, not just the face of the Hershey's campaign. I mean all of this generation that's mentally unstable. You don't have to want to be transgender to fall into that category. People are worse off today. And I don't say that in the statement of like, oh, the next generation is worse. No, I think our generation was worse than the last, and I think it's gone downhill. I think I think my grandfather's generation was better than my parents, and it's gone down since then. So I don't think you can argue otherwise, just societally. And if you look back in history, when you start focusing on gender, when gender becomes the main staple of societal talking points and not like advancements and betterment for people, when you think betterment is forcing other people to be miserable and not make sense and question reality, because that's what you're making people do. You're making people like think that they're wrong for just understanding what's real. And that's not good. That's not a good thing to do. That's because you're making people who are intelligent enough to not just take this at surface value reconsider their thoughts. And I don't think that's right. I think that's wrong. I think this is all a crazy, out of loop 4chan joke that's now gone. It's Frankenstein. It's Frankenstein's monster. Frankenstein is 4chan. The monster is society today. Yeah. So here's a list of all the Hershey stuff if you wanted to take a look. It's kind of saddening to me. Here's Whoppers. That's a big one for me. All the Cadbury stuff. That's all the mini eggs. Rolo, huge for me. I loved Rolo. Score. Zagnut. All right. Reese's. But the one that hurts me the most, Milk Duds. Because Milk Duds, I'm old enough to just remember going to Blockbuster and grabbing some Milk Duds after you like rented a game or a movie or something, and then it being stuck in your teeth for like 3 days. It's just something sad that I'm going to have to... My girlfriend loves these Brookside chocolates that I had no idea. That it's just whatever. I don't like when you push dumb politics. Just be a chocolate. Why are you being like this? Just be candy. I don't know why you would go out of your way to alienate half of your market, because half of your market thinks that's ridiculous. For sure. There is at least 50% of the people out there that sees a Hershey campaign run by a dude in a wig think that there has to be at least 50%. Maybe it's 49%, maybe it's 40%, whatever it is today that thinks that's ridiculous. They're alienated by your product now. And that's what you've done. So now I'm not going to have a York Peppermint Patty or a Icebreakers Mints because they own all that shit. Nobody wanted an Almond Joy to start. So there you go. I'll probably still eat some of this stuff. I'm not going to lie. But I just still think, like, I'm actively not, there will be a few times that I just don't because I go, nah, I'll just have a different candy. So I don't know. I try to do that stuff where you're just like, yeah, spend your money where you believe in the products and what they stand for and stuff. But at this point, I can only buy like 8 things. So like nothing. I've given up on that. But I do, if I have the choice where I'm like, oh, I could get a Hershey's bar or I could get a coffee crisp, I'll just be like, all right, I'll get a coffee crisp. I don't fucking care. Like, it's not a big deal. It's fucking chocolate at the end of the day, and I'm not gonna make a dent in their bottom line because I eat like 10 pieces of chocolate a year. So it's really not gonna matter. But go fuck yourself, Hershey. I'm not gonna support it. I'm not gonna actively support your delusions. Anyway, so this is something called the Monk Debate. I've watched this before. It features Matt Taibbi in it too. I recommend you watch it. I will try to post it somewhere so you guys can see this whole thing. But it is Matt Taibbi, and it's not even him who I want to focus on. It's Douglas Murray. Douglas Murray is a British political commentary and comedian. I want to say he's I don't know much about him other than seeing him on this. And this is a pro-con debate about mainstream media and where they're at. And he is taking the position along with Matt Taibbi, who you might know from the Twitter files, who was one of the lucky people to get the Twitter leaks about all the craziness that's been going on behind the scenes at Twitter. But he's making the point and this goes back to the Freedom Convoy last year, he's making the point of the coverage of the Freedom Convoy was very distorted, and it was tactfully done. It was done purposefully like that. And that's not the way that the media should be. And the state of the media is in a decline. So I'll let him explain it.
Well, thank you very much, Rudyard. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. As Rudyard said, I've come a rather long way from the front lines of the Ukraine conflict because I like to see these things with my own eyes for myself and to come to my own conclusions. I came out through Moldova the other day, through London, then got to Toronto, and a friend of mine said, "Why are you going to Toronto?" I said, "An invitation to Toronto in late November? Who on earth says no to that?"
Hilarious.
Only a madman would say no to that. You'll see shortly why I'm so keen to speak about...
I'm not going to lie. I've watched this twice now because I watched this on my own, and then I watched it again because I was like, this is a good... The lady that's behind him in the glasses looks so... I was fixated on her the second time that I watched this. She is so bitter the whole time the anti-mainstream media arguments are being presented. I don't know what CNN affiliate she works for, but she is upset.
This issue here in Canada. Let me put it this way, though, to begin with. I would say in recent years, any sentient observer of the media will have had their moment of realization, a moment where they saw through something that the mainstream media was doing. It may have happened because the mainstream media said something about you or someone you know. It may be, as in my case, for instance, that an entire country got maligned by the mainstream media. It's very interesting, this result. It was 48-52. That's exactly the result that the British people had in the Brexit vote. You know what? When we voted to leave the European Union, we did so against all of the implications of the New York Times, Michelle's employer. We just didn't listen to them. And the New York Times never forgave us. Ever since 2016, there has not been one story in the New York Times that's positive about Britain. We have had, and I'll run through some of them, we had a culinary review that said that the British people still survive on mutton and oatmeal. We had an anti-Brexit piece from the north of England, from Lancashire, a piece of reporting, where the author ended up having to admit that every single one of his facts was wrong, but his perception was correct. We had, recently the New York Times drafted in somebody from Russia Today, Vladimir Putin's propaganda channel, as an employee of the New York Times, to attack Brexit Britain. And when Her Majesty the Queen died, not 10 days of mourning was observed at the New York Times, 3 hours before they started attacking the Queen. And they did so day after day after day, because they hate Brexit Britain.
So, if you remember, right after the Queen died, there was so much like, is it okay that and this might just be Canadian, so if you're outside of this, but 100% there are articles, opinion pieces that are written as a facade for news nowadays, where they say, is it okay to feel sad that the Queen died, knowing what she did to the native people of Canada or black people, or that she's a racist who like Nintendo Wii? I was like, dude, like, okay, we get it. She's not Hitler. Like, if they're a terrible person, it's okay to be like, oh wow, yeah, is it almost gloating that they're dead at a certain point, which is understandable. I can understand if you're just like, this person's terrible. But like, the Queen, what has the monarchy done in her, like, in the entirety of the time that anybody writing an article about her right now has known? The Queen has just been a figurehead for Britain. She's not like actively go, oh, well, here's a policy on vaccines. That's not what's going on. She's playing Wii, apparently. That's what we found out when she died. She's like Nintendo Wii. And who didn't? It was way ahead of its time. But he makes the point that the Wall Street Journal doesn't like a person, an idea, a country, and they will never be objective about it again. Whatever it is, if whoever's in charge of it, whoever is the editor, whoever gets the final cut on the things of in the Wall Street Journal, when somebody crosses them, they never forget and they never turn back. And if there is ever an apology when they were dead wrong and people are calling them out, it's on page 6 under the obituaries next to an advertisement for Honda. You're like, why? It's so relieving when somebody says they're wrong. When somebody says they're wrong, like, I'm wrong so much. It's just really hard to see it at the time. But, like, when you believe you're right and then somebody's telling you that you're wrong to your face, it usually makes you dig in further. That's usually what it is. It doesn't stop me from doing it. I mean, I'll tell you you're wrong right to your stupid face because you're wrong and I'm right. Yeah, but that's what I believe at the time. But when you realize and you're slowly realizing that, like, oh, there's a couple of holes in my, oh shit, you gotta take your lumps. Because if you don't take your lumps, your victories are meaningless. That's what I say. Like, every time that you're right about something is meaningless because of all the times that you were wrong and never atoned for it. When you square up with somebody that you were having like a balls to the wall heated argument and you find out you were wrong, it gains you so much credit in their eyes, regardless of your right or wrong position. If they were right, they get to gloat for a second and then it's over. Like, nobody gloating on somebody when you're like, oh, dude, you were right. Holy shit. Yeah, I thought I was this and it was that. Them going, haha, you're stupid. Da, da, da. It lasts 2 seconds. Anything longer, they're an insane person. Like, wow, you're fucking so stupid. Oh my God. Then you shouldn't even be talking to this person because, like, why? You're never going to have an intelligent conversation. Anyway.
That is just an agenda, ladies and gentlemen. That's not anything else. That's an agenda, one they've decided to take. Now, I said that I want to be here in Canada to talk about this because I think that this country has just been through something absolutely extraordinary. You really know that the world is in trouble when Canada becomes very interesting. I remember when your elections, as Norm MacDonald said, were all about, like, should we put up that bridge or not? Now Canada has become really interesting. It became interesting in January and February of this year. Why? Because you had protesters in Ottawa. Really interesting. When people come out in large numbers, and you know what the job of reporters is? The job of reporters is to go out and say, why are you on the streets? What brought you here? Why are you here with your kids? Why have you got a bouncy castle in the middle of Ottawa? That's a bit strange. Ask them questions. Just find out the story. But you know what? The government didn't want that in Canada. Your Prime Minister decided in advance that these people were, what did he do? All the modern excommunications. They were Nazis, they were white supremacists, they were anti-Semites, they were probably homophobes, they were misogynists, they were probably transphobes, etc., etc., etc. He did all the things you do in the modern political age if you want to just defenestrate somebody who's awkward to you. And then he brings in the Emergency Powers Act. Now, at such a time, what would the mainstream media do? It would question it. It would question it. The Canadian mainstream media did not. The Canadian mainstream media acted as an amen chorus of the Canadian government. I will give you a couple of examples, but...
Now, this is beautiful.
Ladies and gentlemen, I could go on for hours with examples of this. You had a CBC host describing the Freedom Convoy as a, quote, feral mob. You had a Toronto Star columnist saying, quote, sorry for the language, it's a homegrown hate farm that was then jet-fueled by an American right-funded rat-fucking operation. Jesus, they can't even write at these papers anymore. CBC said that 2 Indigenous women who were so scared to go outside in Ottawa because of racist violence didn't bother to mention that Indigenous drummers had led the truckers in an O Canada rendition. The National Observer said that the many black and Indigenous Freedom Convoy supporters were in fact duped by the truckers. The Globe and Mail reporter said, my 13-year-old son told me to tell protesters I'm not a Jew out of fear of anti-Semitic violence without mentioning that one of the leaders of the convoy was himself Jewish. Now, why is this so rancid? Utterly, utterly rancid and corrupt. Because in this country, your media, your mainstream media, is funded by the government.
Now, that is the biggest point of this entire thing. When your media is funded by the government, why would you bite the hand that feeds? That is the entirety of this argument. You should never have that. Government should be taken out of things, especially like media. That is the entire point of this entire thing that we've talked about today. I think he makes that so clear. Clearer than I could ever, because I'm just some dumb asshole from Canada with misinformed takes. They're hot, though. I'll tell you. They're misinformed, but they are hot. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Next week, I know I'm going to talk about the new rendition of the Canadian national anthem that the lady talked about. I'm going to try and keep doing these whenever I can, put them out on the website when we get a backlog of them. You guys get to enjoy them early. If you're listening to this on clevernamepodcast.com, just know that you got this early. Once we get a backlog of these, we're going to flood them out. They're going to go into and you guys need to spread them. I need everybody to spread them. Once I get these out, I need the army of people that are listening to this, I need you to spread them like the plague and get them out everywhere. And then I'm going to slowly take them away. And I'm going to bring them back here, and they're only going to get on the website again, and and then only the first couple are going to go out. So the way that it's going to work is maybe the first 10 will be available on YouTube and cycled out. So the latest 10 will be available, and then the backlog will only be here. So the real OGs who are watching from the start get to enjoy it. So thank you, everybody. I'm really enjoying doing this show. I love talking about this stuff. I'm probably going to get a co-host soon. But you know what? I'm very picky. I gotta find the right guy. I gotta find the right guy or girl, whatever. I gotta find, or her, she. But thank you, everybody. I really appreciate this. Just keep going. It's gonna get better. It might get worse, but it's gonna get better. I promise.